Next on KQED Newsroom, the impact of crime on young people.
I hope I make the 22, honestly. I don't know if I really see myself making it to 22 yet.
Being in a gang is not what I want to do. I'd rather be able to work at a Google office.
So we are not just, dumb kids sitting here, buying guns, getting shot. That's not us. We are fighting against these things.
What's needed to stop the violence on Oakland streets? Good evening and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Scott Schaefer. Tonight we want to bring attention to something that's simply unacceptable. Violence that's taking the lives of young people in Oakland. Last Saturday night, Davon Ellis was shot and killed while walking to the store with some friends. Ellis was a freshman at Oakland Technical High School. He'd received a scholarship to attend a private school in Hayward next year. He was just 14 years old. His death, of course, has devastated his family and the community. Police have identified a person of interest in the case. In the past 5 years, 41 children under the age of 18 have been killed in Oakland. Most were killed by guns. Another 670 kids have been wounded in shootings. I asked some students at MetWest High School in Oakland this week to talk about the impact of violence on their lives. Here's what they had to say. Well, just tell me a little bit about Davon.
Davon, he was a cool person. Could always make you laugh. If he was having a bad day, he could cheer you up.
How so?
Yeah.
Is he funny?
He was very funny, yeah. He tells some good jokes.
How'd you know him?
Went to school with him.
So what, when you heard that he was killed, what went through your mind?
It was sad, and I want to know what happened and why they killed him.
It just seemed completely random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was really into his sports, He liked playing football, a very positive person. I could see him in the league, getting drafted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He played defensive end, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, corner.
Oh, he was a cornerback?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
2 of my cousins actually killed by gun violence.
Recently?
One was last summer, and another one was when I was in 4th grade. So, yeah.
And this is just in Oakland?
Yeah, Oakland.
And what were the circumstances?
Well, my first cousin was killed actually by his best friend, and my other cousin, he was killed, I think, in front of our grandmother's house. So I don't really know. I don't want to, get into too much detail about it.
Yeah. What effect does that have on you, on your family?
It was just very sad because they were both young, and it's already sad when young black men die, because it's it happens a lot. So just to know that it's in my family is even more sad, because my first cousin, he was 17, so he didn't even make 18, so it's already known that young black men usually don't make it to live to 18. So it was sad that he had to be a part of that statistic, and my other cousin actually had a baby, so it was sad that his daughter is out here without a father.
How many people do you know who've been shot or killed?
I would have to start back from when I was 12, and I would also have to start back with me being shot at 12. Police just kind of roll around the town looking for trouble, because they think, they're really paranoid of where I live, because I live in the murder zone. They really get afraid because we ain't afraid to pop back at the cops. But also, I feel like it's a back and forth thing with the police, because the police kind of harass us, and so we kind of get a guard up you know what, you ain't about to do it to me no more. We ain't gonna take it. So I really feel for a lot of people that's locked up. I got a couple of homies that's locked up right now. My homie got 4 more months. I can't wait for him to get out. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna help him get a job, because I know how hard it is. Because a lot of times people can't get a job because they got felons. Why? Because, for some reason the government just hands out felons to black people like peanuts at an A's game.
I lose a lot of friends or family members. So I feel like violence in Oakland has an effect on everybody, even if you're not losing someone, because then someone who is targeted with the violence can grow up and then attack your kids or something like that. It's like a never-ending cycle.
It affects everyone, whether you're losing a family member or a friend or yourself, if you're a target of this violence. I mean, you never know, because these are lives being lost in our communities, and so when someone is lost in the community, everyone suffers from it, whether they realize it or not.
How does it affect you?
Personally, whenever I hear about, young kids being gunned down, it really hits home, because I feel like a lot of youth, we tend to sort of close up in our bubbles and not really realize the outside world. But then, when something like this happens, an ex-classmate of mine is killed, I realize, that could have been me, so easily, and so it really hits home.
I hope I make the 22, honestly. I don't know if I really see myself making it to 22 yet. You feel me? Because I ain't lived life yet. You feel me? Like, I've only lived 17 years. I know I got more time ahead of me than behind me if God want me to. But, you know, like, I don't know, you know, tomorrow's not always promised where I'm from. So I try to make the best out of every day, and I try to go forward with whatever I do. You know, I try to go the farthest with everything. You know, I try to go the hardest and I don't know, just try to be me.
So when you say you don't know if you'll see 22 because
it's the murder zone, you feel me? Like, people don't make it to 16 where I'm from. People, you feel me, a lot of my homies, feel me, drink before 21 because they don't know if they gonna make it to 21, real talk. You feel me? That's just how the game go. Cause, you know, when you on your deathbed, you don't wanna, last thing you wanna really ask is, what if I did this? Nah, I'm gonna go experience right now in case I don't make it to that age. That's just how it's gonna be. You feel me? But if I make it to that age, hey, you know, it's good. For me, I hope I go. I know I'm gonna see it for me if God want me to. But you know, if I don't, what am I gonna be remembered as? You know, what my integrity stand for, and they gonna remember me as an intelligent young black male who can pontificate in an articulate manner, but also get real hood on somebody when it's really you need to.
If you were, you know, king and queen for a day, and you could change 1 or 2 or 3 things about Oakland to make life better, what would you change?
Put the guns away. Yeah, if I could take all the guns out of Oakland.
You think that would make the biggest difference?
Yeah.
Yep, put them guns away. And also jobs, like give us some more jobs out here. Like that's one of the reasons why people be in the streets, because like they don't have nothing else to do.
One of the biggest problems that I see is that schools aren't fully equipped to give us all the tools that we need in life. So like you said, you know, they're teaching us how to read, how to write, how to do math, but they're not teaching us, or not all schools are teaching us, you know, how to get a job, how to be successful, you know, that we don't have to just live up to these stereotypes that people think of us. So I feel like one of the biggest problems for us is there's just not enough support in schools.
Did you have somebody telling you that you had a different option?
I did, but like I feel like that can only affect the person so much. Like I agree with everything you're saying, but again, it depends on the person. Because even though people were telling me like I could do better, I could be in college, like I could have a great job, there was a part of me that was like, well, I could do that, or I could just go out here, make quick cash, being like a drug dealer or a gang member, whatever. So like it kind of depends on the person and what they want in life.
Well, how did you make the decision not to go that way?
I made the choice because I got to see, like, the way I see it is a lot of kids in East Oakland don't get to be in a professional environment and don't get to see that. So I was exposed to that, and I realized, like, being in a gang is not what I want to do. I'd rather be able to work at a Google office or a Twitter office or something like that.
You said you've got a hustler's ambition.
Yeah,
but
that means I go get it.
Yeah, but you're here in school.
Yeah, I'm hustling. That's hustling. You feel me? Because I think a lot of people misunderstood the word of hustle. They always put hustling into a street sense. But I feel like hustling can, you feel me, a lot of people on my block respect me because I go to school. You feel me? Because that's being, I mean, there's a lot of ways of being a gangster. For me, I know I can go and do it the street way, but I also am thug enough, you know, thug life, you know, to go get it in the legal way. You know, just because I can. You feel me? Because I have the mindset to do it, because I have that hustle's ambition to go get it. Like, I'm gonna go get my diploma, I'm gonna go ahead and walk that stage, and if I don't go get it, then I can't say too much.
What do you think, you know, people who watch the news, they have an impression of Oakland, they have an impression of young people, especially people of color. What do they miss? What do they not know about you guys?
Yeah, Oakland's not a bad place. Very positive things to do. Like, you got the turf fiends, they be dancing and stuff like that. You got a lot of rappers and stuff from Oakland. Very, you know, positive people, creative.
People of color actually are really intelligent, and we actually have stuff going for us. You only see a certain, like, on the media, we only on there, like, if somebody gets killed or, you know, like, negative stuff happens. But we're actually doing a lot of positive things. Like, there's a lot of organizations that people at our school are part of that's standing up for police brutality and stuff like that.
I want everyone to know that Oakland Youth, that we're listening and that we're watching, and that we're not just sitting here silently, you know, letting all these things happen to us. We're aware of the social pressures and the systems that are put up against us, and that we're fighting against them. Because there's so many, you know, seniors at my school, because we all have senior projects that, you know, that we're tackling issues in our communities, and there are a lot of students that are really passionate about these issues and going out and fighting and protesting, doing all of these things. So we are not the stereotypes. We are not just, you know, dumb kids sitting here, you know, buying guns, getting shot. That's not us. We are fighting against these things.
You know, when you think about Davon, what would be a good way to honor his memory, do you think?
Just keep his name alive and stay positive. Yeah, and try to do, you know, I go to college because I know that's something he would do. Want to go to school and be successful.
Yeah.
And just stay in school.
And joining me now to discuss what's happening on the streets and how best to respond are Marian Castelluccio, Dominican Sister of Adrian, Michigan, and Mental Health Director for Catholic Charities of the East Bay; Olis Simmons, CEO of Youth UpRising in Oakland; and Ryan Smith, Executive Director of the Education Trust West. They're an advocacy group. Welcome to all of you. So glad you're all here.
Thank you.
We just heard from these incredibly articulate, smart, thoughtful people. They talked about guns and jobs and race and the police. What stood out for you? What really jumped out as something that struck you?
You know, the thing that jumped out is the contradiction in these young people. They are extraordinary, but they're also ordinary. I mean, this is the typical young person in Oakland, and it's extraordinary because people have a very different impression of our young people. And I think anybody who had a lower expectation, shame on you. I think these young people are very much typical.
You know, it's interesting. The young man who said, you know, I'd celebrate if I get to 22.
Michael.
And I have a, yes, Michael, and I have a birthday coming up. But I remember actually becoming 23, 24, and a lot of the young men and myself saying, wow, we made it. And that being an indicator of success for young black men. And the sad thing is, if you look at young and black and brown men, we talk about the context, young black and brown men are almost overrepresented in every indicator connected to failure and underrepresented in every indicator connected to success. If that's not a call to action, then what is?
And what is it? Do people sort of live down to expectations as well as rising up to expectations?
I don't, please.
But I think the video, the young people shared with us the fact that they do have high expectations.
That's right.
And what's happening is we're failing them. We're not putting the, if I can make more stuff selling the drugs on the corner and support myself, and no one's helping me get a job, and they have high expectations. And we are not putting the resources available to them for them to meet those expectations.
I mean, frankly, I thought the young people were brilliant in their enumeration of the issues. You know, the NRA wants to take on gun control is an issue, but when young people talk about the very real impact on their lives and on their communities, their sense of hope and possibility, you have to hear that. And then talking about there's not enough support in school, we absolutely need jobs. Like, these are the core issues, and we want to talk about what they've done or not done, but the truth is they've inherited adult failure.
Let's talk about the schools, and of course, Ryan, that's your area in particular, but all of you really touch upon the schools. In Oakland, 80% of the students are either ESL, English as a second language, they're low income, or they're in foster care. Any one of those things presents a whole host of challenges. But when you ask the schools to deal with all of those things and teach, you know, reading, writing, math, how do you help the schools to succeed?
I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, I was thinking about the youth. Not only are they brilliant, they're dealing with the trauma of seeing their cousins pass away. They're dealing with the trauma of believing they won't actually graduate. And that does set the context. Right now in Oakland, only 50% of young black men actually graduate from high school. If you take that in the California context, one out of every 20 black kindergartners will only graduate high school and go to college. That's 5% of black youth in California. We have to do more in partnerships with our schools. Educators are doing as much as possible, but we also need to wrap our arms around schools. There's a lot of great wraparound support services that are happening. There's an amazing initiative around young black and brown men of color that's been rolled out not only in Oakland and other cities, but more must be done. You
know, if you think about the failure and how many schools fail, I mean, if it were a fire department, health clinics, and had that rate of failure, that wouldn't be acceptable. Why is it acceptable with schools?
You know, it's funny. I think that people, the same thing with violence. They feel like school failure in a poor neighborhood's not my problem. Violence in a poor neighborhood's not my problem. Unemployment's not my problem. And I don't know that people really fully have embraced the reality that we're indivisible as a nation, that we absolutely are going to sink and swim together.
And the success of the students is the responsibility of all of us. And so how can we create school cultures that don't use punitive. So one of the things, we're in the West Contra Costa County schools, and we're enabling them through restorative practice to change their corporate school culture.
Say what that is, restorative practice.
Restorative practice is focused on the relationship. So rather than being punitive in the relationship, so we're going to expel you, zero tolerance in this school for these 20 things. And we're just going to get rid of you, and see, we get rid of you and then we don't have a problem. You're somebody else's problem. The restorative practice is to sustain and develop the relationship so that how do you resolve things without the punitive disciplinary thing? It takes the whole school. It's a 2-year process.
When you say the whole school, do you mean
it takes the principal,
literally everybody?
The principal, the teachers, the students, the
custodial
staff, the ladies in the cafeteria. It takes everybody buying into the fact that there is another way to resolve differences, and that to acknowledge that the impact and what people are dealing with, and sometimes we just call them acting out, they're just dealing with trauma. You know, if I come to school Monday morning and my best friend's been murdered, and I'm going to go through the school day, then I'm going to be expelled before the lunch hour.
Absolutely.
Whereas when you develop a restorative practice within capacity within the school, they do a check-in on Monday mornings, they find out that this has happened, then they give emotional support to the student, and they don't get expelled.
You can do only so much, I would think, if you start in the high schools. I mean, you really have to begin when kids are born, right?
Absolutely. Brain development's really clear.
Sure.
If you begin at 6 weeks or before, right? So for children that are living in poor neighborhoods, they hear 30 million words less than children living in affluent neighborhoods. And those aren't 30 million unique words. They're just 30 million words.
And that's why?
It's because people living in poor communities have not been socialized or trained or supported, because they've got the stress of, can I keep my energy bill on? How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to get my kids to school? To spend that really critical time singing, reading, talking to your children. And the brain starts to develop very, very early. And at a certain point, if you've not stimulated the brain in a certain kind of way, you've missed the opportunity to do that pretty much forever.
Well, the really great thing is, I know we can talk about failure, but there's a lot of promising practice happening in our communities as well.
Yes.
I had the opportunity to sit down with Chris Chapman, who's actually the executive director of the African American Initiative within Oakland Unified. And when he talked about the young black men he worked with, he talked about them as kings in our community, that we need to take care of kindergarten through high school and through college. And that's really a cultural shift. You know, Davon doesn't exist in a vacuum. And you can go to Oakland, you can go to Baltimore, you can go to Brooklyn, or you can go to South Los Angeles, and we see the same story. So it's really not just about what's happening with schools. It's about awakening our collective consciousness to know that this is a tragedy that we no longer can tolerate.
Marian, what do you say to a mother and or a father, a family that loses somebody who's 14 years old? What do you tell them?
I think the first thing we do is we receive their story, we honor their story. We don't come in with an easy answer. So people, sometimes people come in with easy answers and say, oh, it's going to be okay, this is going to go away. It's not going to go away. So they have, what we do in response to the crisis response that we do, walking with families. We've had a loved one murdered in the city of Oakland. We sit down and we're real. First of all, we don't come in with paper. We come in and we receive their stories as many times as they need to tell us their story. And we honor that. And I say, gee, I didn't get a chance to know your child. What kind of a baby? How did that person sleep during the night? And we receive that story and we companion them. So we don't say, do you want to have therapy? Because people are going to say, hey, I don't want a therapist right now. You know, I've got to take care of my PG&E bill. I use my rent money for the funeral, all of those kinds of things. And so what we do with them is we companion them, we help take care of the environmental things so that at some point they can grieve.
So it's giving them respect and empathy.
We're giving them respect. We walk as a compassionate presence. We say, when everybody else gets settled down, we're going to be with you. We'll walk with you the next year.
You're a woman of faith.
Yes.
How do you answer questions like, how could God let this happen to my child?
My response is, that's not who my God is. You know, my response is, who is God for you? First of all, who is God for you? Would your God do this? I think this is we've missed the mark in supporting our kids. We've missed the mark in our humanness. And therefore, that's what caused this. You can't lay this at the feet of God. At the same time, God can be your strength. and companion you through this process, so that we'll hold the hope until you can hold the hope for yourself.
You know, Oakland is a city with many churches, many black churches. Have they failed young people?
I think that that's tough. I think it's a hard thing to blame the black church when we tell the truth about these problems. And these problems, the murder of a young black man is not disconnected from the quality of education, the quality of housing, the quality of early education, the access for them in the future, in their families right now, to employment, meaningful family-sustaining employment. And in that context, you can't possibly blame the black church. You can't blame the family. You have to say that we have a collective responsibility.
So does the church need to do more, do something different?
All of us need to do more.
Exactly. We can't start to point at institutions here and there. First of all, I think the black church has been the cornerstone of the community and has held many parts of the community together. But this is really a systemic issue. We can't just look at Oakland in a vacuum. We have to look at the systems that continually disenfranchise young men like Davon and young women as well. So until we start talking about structural racism, until we talk about the impacts of unemployment in our communities, until we start addressing the big issues, we can't look at smaller institutions and blame them.
And it was the churches in the city of Oakland that got the city center and got 3,000 people down there to address and hold the city council and the mayor accountable to what they said. It was the churches.
Yeah.
So Oakland Community Organization. So
it's interesting, and because we're talking about churches, but do you know that in Oakland, only 16% of Oakland teachers think there's a meaningful relationship between schools and law enforcement? When we talk about...
What does that mean, a meaningful relationship?
Meaning that they actually feel like they're partnering in a productive way with those who are supposed to protect and serve.
Yeah, and let me ask you about that, because one of the things that stands out when you look at the statistics is how many unsolved murders there are in Oakland.
Yeah.
Talk about that. How does that connect with this lack of trust that the police have, or the community has, with the police?
I mean, two things. One is that there's an inverse relationship between crime and education. When young people are not in school and not productively engaging and moving towards a career, there's a very clear correlation between an increase in crime. So let's say that there's a very clear connection. But the other thing to say is that police come after a crime has been committed, right? Safety happens between neighbors. Safety happens between homeowners and storekeepers and families. And people often know who's committed a crime, but if you don't trust the police, you're not going to tell them. And so I've spent at Youth UpRising a lot of time and energy building a meaningful relationship with command and saying we've got to deal with police-community relations. People don't trust you, and we've got to solve that.
And I should say we did invite the Oakland Police Department to come on the show, and they declined. Same with the schools, actually. So is there change happening between the police and the community in Oakland?
I think so. I think it's slow. I think the new leadership is very promising. I like the new chief. He's young. He is social justice minded as a police chief. But I think that the legacy of the department is powerful. The distrust and disdain that people hold is going to take a long time, because if you've not been right by me for generations, I'm not going to trust you quickly.
Yeah, Marian?
And I also think that the community policing, the neighborhood watches that are being set up and having the community police officer present in that kind of a thing. And we've also had a number of things, events like a memorial or that kind of thing, where some police officers have showed up not in their uniform, simply as a person who cares in this community. Now, we can develop that, but everything you said is just right on. When you've got this legacy of mistrust, it's not going to go away in a blink, and yet we're working on it.
Yeah, right. I'll just build upon what Marian's saying. Not only is it about the legacy, but actually talking about it, actually addressing it, having a dialogue about what's happened in the past. We can bring on new leader after new leader, and I wish the new leadership well, but until we talk about what's happened in the past and what people feel, the trust that the mistrust over decades will never actually get to the root cause.
And also, I know that recently, of course, we're having a national conversation about a lot of these things, race and policing, and you met with the Attorney General Eric Holder when he was in town recently. What did you hear from him?
I heard that as he exits out, he's inviting the citizens and leaders in Oakland to take on their responsibility to be in meaningful, productive relationship with each other towards solving these problems. And I want to say that, yes, the churches, yes, the police, yes, service providers, yes, all of that. But ultimately, there is a responsibility from our corporate citizens to be very much active. Join a board, donate money, create a job.
Get involved.
Get involved.
Yes.
Like, this isn't a siloed problem. This is everybody's problem.
And these are all our children. So it doesn't make any difference if I don't live in East Oakland or not. These are our children. This is our future. We owe it to them. So if you live in the Piedmont area or you live someplace outside of that, this is your problem. Because these are our children, and they are our future. And you heard those children saying, "We're not stupid sitting here.
They're paying attention.
We're paying attention, and we're expecting you to show up at the table and be supportive of us."
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have just a very short time left, a minute. Each of you, really quickly, what gives you hope for what you're seeing now, Ryan?
What gives me hope is that not only are our children brilliant, but we're beginning to see efforts to really engage them more. I think youth voice is very powerful. So instead of doing change silently, alone in a silo, we need to do it with youth and community. I think that's very important.
All right, Marian, how about you?
What gives me hope is something Ryan said. We used to, the community policing, the relationships and stuff. It's like it's been the elephant in the room, and now we're talking about it. It's out here, it's out in the front, it can be addressed, we can work on it together. The more things we put out front and not be the elephant in the room, the better chance we have.
Quickly.
What gives me hope is the emerging national dialogue about equity as the growth strategy, to say that as a nation, we have to be more equitable. This isn't about what happens in one neighborhood. This is what we do collectively.
Thank you all very much. I just want to clarify one thing. We didn't invite the schools to be on. We did invite the Oakland Police Department, and they declined. Thank you all so much
Thank you for having us.
Thank you from all of us here at KQED, and lots of luck and, continued great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that is it for tonight. And for all of KQED's news coverage, please go to kqednews.org. I'm Scott Schaefer. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good night.